Hi, everybody. My dear Substack subscribers and visitors, thank you so much for being here today. And I want to give a special shout out to my paid subscribers and my heroic founding members, Judy and Richard. This short story is called Running. And, I'm not sure if it's recording or not. I think it is. Damn, if it's not, I'm going to read this whole story to myself. That's okay. We are not afraid to make mistakes. Here it goes. And I don't know when I wrote this. It was a long time ago. I just got my hair done. Do you like my hair? I don't know. Is this... Okay. The good side of my face? Well, this is the side of my face that you're going to see because I'm looking on another screen. Oh, and by the way, this is the room where I write. And as you can see, I think I have recently started setting up some equipment to make really fancy videos. We'll see if that happens. Here's the short story called Running. His name was Coach Rogers, a young guy in matching fitness shorts and shirt with spick and span white socks, a perfect shave. I was 13 years old, and he was the first adult to ever call me on the telephone. He asked me if I would like to run for him. We met on a hot spring afternoon at the city track. Anyone who didn't live in Northwest Georgia would have called the weather humid, but we never used that word. It was either nice outside, which meant that car door handles didn't burn your fingers as long as you parked in the shade, or it was muggy. When it was nice outside, you felt like you were walking under warm water, and even when you stood still, sweat soaked through your clothes and made them heavy. When it was muggy, people shot each other. "Let's warm up with a mile run," said Coach Rogers, and I jammed up against the other girls at the start line, flexing my calves. I had once run a lap. Everything was new to me. The bitter odor of softening asphalt, the ping of a pole vaulter in the grassy center, the taunting curve of track that seemed to stretch away as you neared it, and the coach, distant and all-knowing with the silver stopwatch in his open hand. The sun beat down on my neck, and the freshly painted lines wavered. There were 5 or 6 of us crowding for the inner lane. Coach yelled, "Go!" and brought his hand down against his thigh as if we were horses. Immediately, everyone passed me. They sprinted ahead, arms flapping, hair waving, panting wildly, while I hung doggedly at their heels, hugging the inner lane. Coach had said, "Pace yourself," so I did. Gradually, one by one, the other runners fell back. I passed the pale, thin girl who had turned bright red, and the lazy, laughing one who walked off the track. When I passed a black girl with a big butt, I felt her smoking wrath and was afraid, but I kept on. I began to enjoy passing. I found that if I closed in on a runner's back and stayed there, close enough for her to hear my breath, all the while sending her the mental message, "You are getting tired," I created a psychological advantage. At the critical moment when I actually stepped out of the inner lane and broke my stride to beat my victim, I put all my heart into my stride and smiled big as if I had all 100 miles left in my legs. It was this show of spirit that wore them down, made them quit before they had used themselves up. Some of my competitors were tougher than others, like the steaming black girl who could have flattened me with one wallop of her fist, and a scraggly-looking white kid wearing one red sock and one pink one who jerked into faster gear each time I passed her, passing me in turn. But these challenges, I reasoned, only increased my speed and reduced my overall time. There was only one runner I couldn't pass. Her name was La Rochelle, and she ran the mile in 5 minutes and 18 seconds, hardly breaking a sweat. She came to the first practice barefoot, giggling with her hand over her mouth and strutting across the pole vault pit so the boys would have to stop and watch her, needling Coach to buy her a Coca-Cola from the machine. "You know I'll pay you back next week," she said, rolling her eyes and trying not to smile. "You think I won't? Say, you don't want to see me faint, do you?" She kept on, prancing before him in her tight shorts until he agreed to buy a soft drink for anyone who ran a mile in under 6.5 minutes. "Don't do me that way," she complained. But when he blew his whistle, she shot off, legs moving in clean, high, rhythmic arcs, thin arms pumping in a single, smooth movement. She ran so fast and with such perfect form that she appeared almost motionless. When she was finished, she tipped her head coquettishly and held out her hand for Coach's money. A single drop of sweat had formed on her upper lip. He kept checking his stopwatch. La Rochelle didn't show up for the next practice or the next, so after a grueling 3-mile run, we all piled into the white van and set out to find her. Coach drove across town and turned into a street beside the housing project. It was a narrow, rough street that had once been paved, and the wooden shacks seemed to lean into each other for support. There was trash in the yards, or what looked like trash to me. Used tires, old washing machines, dirty plastic toys. No one used the front yards in our neighborhood. Some people, kids mostly, came off their porches to get a better look at the white van creeping along, at our sweaty faces in the windows. Someone shouted, "Hey, honky!" and Coach gently braked. "I'm looking for La Rochelle Brown." "She in trouble?" "No, I want her to practice with us for the district track meet coming up July 12th. Do you know where she is?" "Nah." We kept rolling down the street, stopping to spread La Rochelle's name, and eventually, from around the corner of a wooden porch that had once been painted blue, she appeared. Grinning at everyone, she swaggered toward the van. She talked to Coach Rogers for a few minutes. I couldn't hear the words, just the clear, even, congenial tone of his voice, and her sing-song alto broken up with laughter. Finally, the wide door opened and she climbed in. She was wearing a halter, a pair of ratty pink knit shorts, and for some reason, black patent leather Mary Janes, no socks. She looked around quickly, covering her mouth with her hands, as if the sight of us packed into the van, looking for her, was too much to contain, and then told Coach Rogers to turn on the radio. He obeyed. He turned the dial until she found a station she liked. At her request, he turned up the volume. "Let me stop at Burger King," she said. "You get me something to eat." She poked him in the arm. "I'm starving." "After practice," he said. "That will be your reward." "And a milkshake, too," she said, poking him again. "Don't you forget now." Then she raised her mile-long legs off the front seat and rested those patent leather shoes on his polished dashboard. Her hair was all frizzed out in the back, and she kept smoothing it with one hand, twisting his rearview mirror around to see herself better. "I might get me one of them fried apple pies, too," she said, more to herself than to him. "They good." A white girl in the back had the poor judgment to comment that those apple pies came from McDonald's, not Burger King. La Rochelle turned to face her. "Don't make me beat your ugly little face into the ground," she said quickly. Then she turned back around in her seat and patted Coach's arm as if he were her husband. We were all wondering how her shoes were going to hold up on the track. Coach offered her a pair of socks, but she just laughed at him. The shoes made a tapping sound as she sauntered over to the starting line. My own shoes, Apollo Flyers, had 2-inch thick adipprene soles, embedded shock absorbers, and a lightweight foam cushioning that was used in the Apollo spaceship. They were a blinding yellow with cool blue swirls. "They got everything but wheels," the salesman said. La Rochelle looked them over and sniggered before she took off her own shoes and tossed them. Barefoot, a head taller than the rest of us. She pushed her way to the front. We flexed our calves, fixed our barrettes, adjusted our bra straps, licked our lips. La Rochelle stood with one hand on her hip, a bored expression on her face, as if she might be at a bus stop. When Coach blew his whistle, she wasn't even looking at the track. But she took off and was gone, crossing the finish line a full lap before anyone else. "Say, who's your girlfriend?" she asked Coach, looping her patent leather shoes over her shoulder to take the Coca-Cola he'd brought her. He wrote something on her chart and said he thought we had a chance to win the state meet. On a muggy Saturday in August, my mother drove me to the state meet in Atlanta, AC running full blast. The sky was a muted white haze, the way it looks before a snowstorm, but the temperature, averaged in with the humidity index, was 104. The packed bleachers spilled over onto the track and field and into the parking lot where hundreds of people swarmed makeshift hot dog stands and porta potties. The noise hurt my ears and everything stank. Weaving through the crowd like a long, bright ribbon, the athletes in clean uniforms were nothing like me. As I stood beside my mother, soggy and already tired, a child blowing a referee whistle dashed in front of me, followed by another one, whooping and waving his arms as if in defiance of the heavy, terrible heat, and I realized that I did not belong here. You can do it, I told myself. You want this. But I didn't want it. The humidity had seeped into my lungs, my brain, my limp legs. I wanted to quit. It was a 2-mile race. Everyone passed me once and then twice. My psychological warfare failed. These girls ran as fast as sprinters and didn't seem tired at all. The first lap sent a cold burn through my legs, and the second lap, my thighs, and by the second lap, my thighs began to turn red. By the third lap, my heart was aching in my chest, and I wondered if a 13-year-old could have a heart attack. I would have lost count of my own laps, so great was the pain in my side, if an official in zebra stripes hadn't called out my lap every time my foot hit the marker. On the 7th lap, a terrible thing happened. I looked up, gasping, and saw that everyone else had finished the race. The stands were full and silent. Somewhere in there, my mother sat in her red and white dress and sunglasses, focusing her eyes on me, but she was not the reason I kept running. Go, I told myself, faster, get this over with. But my body wouldn't go any faster. I hoped someone would come out and take me off the track, but no one did. Lap 8, called the ref, not looking at me, and the bleachers remained silent while I slowly ground my bones over the asphalt. On the last 50 yards, imagine a bull is chasing you, Coach had told us, and run for your life. Feeling foolish, I bent my head and huffing, thinking now I will fall over now, and seeing stars dance like fireflies in the mirrored white sky, I crossed the finish line. Someone handed me a cool wet towel and said, "Don't sit down." Like an old woman, I took a slow, creaky step, dabbed my forehead, and took another. Now and then I shot a glance at Coach Rogers, who sat on the first bleacher beside an unopened box of Apollo flyers in La Rochelle size. Nobody had been able to find her.